I've done the Pine Ridge Loop probably 40 times. It's a 10-mile trail through second growth forest in western Oregon, well-marked, well-trafficked on weekends. I know every junction. So when I saw the man come out of the trees at mile 7, moving at a pace that didn't match someone who'd been hiking, I noticed he was wearing jeans, not hiking pants, not cargo shorts, dark denim, a gray sweatshirt, trail runners. He fell in about 30 feet behind me. I didn't think much of it at first. Plenty of people do that trail in street clothes. I adjusted my earbuds and kept going. What I noticed after about 10 minutes was that he wasn't gaining on me and he wasn't falling back. Not matching my pace exactly, but staying at that distance. I tested it twice, slowed down to look at something on the side of the trail. He slowed down, sped up on a slight decline. He kept the gap. There are a few ways to play that. You can overthink it. Tell yourself it's nothing, that you're one of those people who spirals on trails. I'm not one of those people. I've hiked solo for 15 years. I don't spiral. I stopped at the ridge overlook, which is the natural pause point. Most people stop there. I pulled out my water and turned to look back down the trail. He was standing at the tree line, maybe 60 feet back, not looking at the view. Looking at his phone. At an angle where I couldn't see his face. I kept moving. The trail dips into a shallow canyon after the overlook. It's the loneliest section of the whole loop, maybe 2 miles of terrain where there's no sightline more than 20 yards and no cell service. I knew he was behind me. I started doing the math on how long that section takes and where the next junction was, where I could plausibly wait for another group to come through. That's when I heard him pick up his pace. Not running, just closing the gap. I turned and he was maybe 40 feet back now, moving steadily, and he looked up at me and smiled. Not a trail smile, not that brief acknowledgement thing hikers do. He held it, kept walking, kept smiling. I said, "You heading to the North Trailhead?" He said, "I'm heading the same way you are." I turned back around and started moving faster. Behind me, I heard him keep pace. I had 2 miles of canyon. I started thinking about what I had in my pack. A bear spray canister clipped to the hip strap that I hadn't touched in years. A knife in the top pocket I'd need to stop to reach. I unclipped the bear spray and held it at my side. At the Mile 9 junction, there's a trail marker and a bench, and usually at least 2 or 3 people resting. When I came around the last bend and saw a couple with trekking poles sitting there eating trail mix, I stopped walking, put my hands on my knees, and stayed there for a moment. He came around the bend, saw the couple slowed, looked at me once, then took the eastern fork without stopping and disappeared into the trees. The couple asked if I was okay. I told them I'd pushed too hard on the canyon section. I sat with them for about 20 minutes before I finished the last mile to the trailhead. My car was the only one in the lot. I did the drive home, made dinner, went to bed. Told myself it was nothing. An awkward guy, a coincidence of pacing. The thing I couldn't stop thinking about though, and I kept coming back to it over the next few days, was the moment he came out of the trees at mile 7. Not from the trail. From the trees. There's no junction there, no cutoff, just slope and underbrush. He'd been in the forest before I reached that point, parallel to the trail. I still don't know how long he'd been walking alongside me before he stepped out. My husband and I do a solo trip every August. Separate trips, separate trails, a long weekend each. It started as a joke and became a ritual. He goes to some river in Montana. I do a 2-night loop in the Cascades. We've done it 8 years running. That August, I was on a route I'd done once before, a 14-mile loop with a backcountry campsite at about the halfway mark. I got there mid-afternoon. The site is a clearing near a creek, a flat stone fire ring, a wooden bear box someone installed years ago. I'd seen 2 other hikers earlier in the day, but the site was empty. I set up my tent, cooked, went to bed while it was still light. I sleep well in the backcountry, that's the whole point of going. I woke up around 2 a.m., not to a sound, just awake, the way you sometimes are, fully alert with no obvious reason. I lay still for a few seconds. The creek was audible, wind in the canopy, normal sounds. I reached for my headlamp and unzipped the tent to get water from my pack, and that's when I saw the fire ring. Someone had laid a fire. Not lit it, laid it. A careful arrangement of kindling and small logs in the ring, paper birch bark folded in at the center. While I was sleeping, I stood there for a long moment with my headlamp pointed at it and thought about the fact that I had been 10 feet away and heard nothing. I packed everything back into the tent, sat in the dark with my knife in my hand until it was light enough to move. I didn't see anyone on the trail the next day. I pushed through to the trailhead in one stretch instead of camping the second night. 14 miles in 8 hours. When I got home, I told my husband. He asked if maybe someone had set it up before I arrived, and I just hadn't noticed in the fading light. I'd considered that. It was plausible. The fire ring had been empty when I cooked. I would have used it, but I couldn't be completely certain I hadn't just missed it, so I let it go, mostly. 3 months later, I was sorting through my trail photos. I document everything. Wildlife, wildflowers, mushrooms, the campsite setup. I have a photo of the campsite from when I arrived, taken to send to my husband. Clean fire ring, empty, and I have a photo from the next morning, taken because the fire layout was so deliberate I wanted to remember it. What I had not noticed in the morning, what I only saw when I zoomed in on my phone at home at my kitchen table in good light, was the small flat stone placed beside the fire ring. On it, lined up like they'd been arranged, were 4 or 5 cigarette butts. Filterless. The same brand. I don't smoke. I hadn't smoked in years. The last time I smoked was in college. Cheap filterless cigarettes I used to buy at a gas station on Route 9, the kind that came in a blue pack. I don't know how anyone would have known that. The Summit register on Mount Carver is one of those old metal boxes bolted to the cairn, the kind with a composition notebook inside and a golf pencil on a string. I've always loved them. They're one of the last purely analog things left on trails. You read a few entries, sign your name, move on. I signed in on a Friday afternoon in early October. Clear day, low crowds, about a 3-hour push from the trailhead. I was the only one on the summit. I sat on the cairn, ate a granola bar, read back a few pages while I rested. Most entries are the same: name, date, weather, exclamation points. Then I found one that wasn't. It was about a third of the way back through the notebook, maybe 6 weeks before my entry. Different handwriting from anything around it, cramped and very small, like someone who writes that way deliberately. The date and weather were filled in normally. Then the entry read, "Good day, quick time up. Watched a woman in a red jacket eat lunch at the false summit, didn't approach. She went back down the south ridge. Some days you choose not to, and that's how it stays a choice." I read it twice. Then I flipped forward in the notebook the weeks after that entry. There were 8 more entries by the same hand. I could pick out the handwriting now, the cramped smallness of it. Each one had a summit time and weather. Each one had a brief line like a field note. A couple described people they'd seen on the approach. One said good conditions, no one interesting. Another said 2 women, too much noise, descended early. The last one was dated 4 days before my summit. It said, "Season ending. 1 or 2 more if the weather holds." I put the notebook back in the box. I was on a summit alone with a trail I had to descend and no cell service and about 3 hours of light left. I went down fast. Not panicking, I want to be clear about that. I'm not someone who panics, but I moved. I didn't see anyone on the descent. Made the trailhead before dark, drove home, spent the next week trying to convince myself it was strange but not dangerous, that whoever it was had a dark sense of humor, that none of the field notes said anything explicitly threatening. Then I thought about the red jacket entry. Watched a woman in a red jacket eat lunch at the false summit, didn't approach. The false summit on that ridge is a very specific spot. If you know the trail, you know exactly where it is. I called the ranger station, told them what I'd found, asked if they could pull the register. They were polite. They said they'd have someone check it on the next patrol. I described the entries, the handwriting. The ranger on the phone went quiet for a second. Then she said, "Can you describe the false summit? Is that the flat section before the last push, the one with the boulder field?" I said yes. She said, "We've had 2 reports this summer of a man watching hikers from that boulder field." She said, reports, plural. She said they hadn't been able to ID anyone. She said I should make sure to log my trail plans with someone going forward. I asked her what the 2 reports involved. She said she couldn't share details of open reports. That's where it ends for me, practically. I haven't been back to that trail, but I think about the notebook sometimes, the specific care of that handwriting, the way whoever it was had written. That's how it stays a choice, like it was something worth recording. A principle, a line they decided to hold for now. 8 entries, 8 summits. I hope every person described in those notes drove home and doesn't know their day is in that box.